The Adirondack Mountains are rugged and remote. It's hard to make a living up here, even go grocery shopping in some places. Double that in the winter. And triple that in the backcountry. Search and rescues are dangerous. They require intense technical skill. We meet one of the state's most relied upon helicopter pilots for some of the most difficult missions. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Pearsall Wealth Management at UBS Wealth Management USA, subsidiary UBS AG, member FINRA SIPC, 1 Broad Street, Glens Falls.
Hey, I'm David Summerstein. It's Monday, July 29th. Thanks to the great Kara Chapman for filling in while I was away. It's good to be back. First up, a minor earthquake in southern Quebec shook parts of the North Country this morning. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the 2.8 magnitude quake occurred just after 8 in the morning, about 15 miles north of Chateauguay. People reported feeling the earthquake as far east as Champlain, along the Canadian border, and as far north as Montreal. Southern Quebec experiences minor quakes about 3 to 4 times each year, according to the USGS. The last major earthquake that caused serious damage in the area was a 6.1 magnitude quake in 1935. Last week, local lawmakers and building developers toured the former Watertown Correctional Facility, a 100-acre property with 90 buildings on it. The state closed the prison in 2021. New York is seeking proposals to give it another life with a new purpose. The winning proposal could be eligible for up to $8 million in state grants. Assemblyman Scott Gray was on the tour, and he told WWNY-TV that the property is in tough shape and thinks it will cost a lot more than $8 million.
One developer said to me that's a drop in the bucket that will be consumed in a heartbeat in this facility. And it's going to be a long process. I think one of the developers who was in it a few years ago said these buildings have aged considerably.
Right now, the proposal deadline is August 30th. Gray says it's likely the state will extend that to get more developers in to see the former prison property. The State Department of Environmental Conservation has a crew of helicopter pilots based in Lake Clear, near Saranac Lake. They're called in for some of the most dangerous search and rescue missions in the Adirondack wilderness. Scott Kotronis has been doing that work for decades, and this month he's retiring after 30 years on the job. Emily Russell brings us his story.
The first time Scott Kotronis tried to fly a helicopter, he was with a seasoned pilot, a friend of his.
He goes, hey, Scott, you want to fly? And I go, sure, because I liked to fly anything at that time, and I didn't know anything. He said, okay, we'll start real easy.
Kotronis had been flying airplanes for more than a decade. He figured, how hard could it be?
And so he transfers the controls to me, and I get him the controls. Next thing I know, I am doing a pendulum in 3 different dimensions type deal, right, left, up, down, and it's like going crazy on me.
The pilot was messing with Kotronis. Turns out hovering a helicopter in place, it's one of the hardest things to do. But Kotronis was hooked. He liked how difficult and dynamic helicopters are. But that also means they're more dangerous.
Helicopters don't want to fly. The joke is they want to kill you. Okay? You can have everything right, you let go of the controls, and they'll try flopping over. It's a balancing act.
Kotronis has mastered that balancing act over his long career. He fell in love with airplanes in high school in Saratoga County. He paid his way through flight lessons. The hope was to become a pilot for the military. But at the time, Kotronis wore glasses, so that option was out. Instead, Kotronis skipped college and went to flight school. He was in his 30s when he finally got into helicopters.
When I first started taking actual helicopter lessons and trying to learn to hover, I would take up like 2 football fields trying to keep it in one space. I'd be doing like this and all over. And then finally also, boom, and it's like, whoa, okay, I think I have this now.
Kotronis landed a job with the New York State Police in the late 1990s. He worked out of Albany for a few years before transferring up to the Adirondacks. At a hangar in Lake Clear, Kotronis slides open the door of a helicopter.
This is my small office, which is the one I enjoy the best, and it has a really good view. So.
His actual office is in the building next door. Pilots come to work here every day. The first thing they do is check the weather, then they check the helicopter.
When we're in medevac configuration, there'd be a pedestal here with a litter on it. Oxygen, suction.
Sometimes they'll have scheduled flight assignments, like resupplying a DEC outpost or restocking fish in a lake. Kotronis says there's always the chance of getting called up for a medevac or a rescue in the mountains.
You may be hearing some stuff going on the scanner, something is going on, possible rescue or overdue person, injury or whatever.
Separated party, 8 people, they're missing one, Phelps tabletop area.
Forest rangers respond to these kinds of incidents all the time. If and when a helicopter is needed, Kotronis says pilots run through a quick checklist. They look at the weather again, they make a flight plan, and they strip down the helicopter.
The lighter the aircraft, the more power you have, which is the higher safety margin.
Again, a balancing act. Kotronis also always makes a backup plan if something goes wrong, like if the winds pick up, if the cloud cover drops.
If this happens here, we're going to do this. If this happens, we're going to do this. And the idea, learned very early on from one of my mentors, is always have a bunch of outs. Don't ever have just one, because that one can disappear really quick.
One of the most dangerous places to fly in the Adirondacks is around Gothics Mountain. There are downdrafts around there. That essentially means the wind sucks the air down the side of the mountain and can take a helicopter down with it. In the winter of 1996, 2 hikers were injured on Gothics, one seriously. Kotronis says conditions were really bad.
It's 25 below, and that's without wind chill. And up in that area, you're talking 20, maybe 30 knot winds. And there was just an ice storm a couple of days before, freezing rain. So everything's covered in ice.
A dozen rangers and rescuers spent the night with the injured hikers. Kotronis flew in at first light. He says the turbulence was terrible.
It was bouncing us so bad that at one stage, something broke. One of the handles broke in the cabin. And I looked back to see the ranger diving for it to grab it before it goes out the door.
Eventually, they hoisted the hiker up into the helicopter. Kotronis flew 2 more trips, picking up dozens of rescuers in the field. Forest Ranger Andrew Lewis has flown with Kotronis for years. He says, especially on the more dangerous trips, it's a relief knowing Kotronis is at the controls.
With aviation missions, it's nonstop risk assessment. Is the juice worth the squeeze, right? With Scott, it's like he's done this like 1,000 times. So I know his risk assessment is highly calibrated.
Kotronis has flown in every kind of condition all over the park and around the state. He's played a key part in firefighting missions. He flew during the 2006 Bucky Phillips manhunt and the 2015 Dannemora prison escape. Kotronis has saved hundreds of lives and impacted thousands more over his 30-year career. Here's Lewis again.
I mean, think of the number of people that have been either medevac to safety via life flight and the helicopter or rescued out of the woods, search operations where the helicopter was used to locate people from the air. The impact of that is massive.
In this video shot on Cascade, you can see Kotronis' helicopter hovering almost perfectly in place. There were 2 rescues on the mountain that day. In this one, a ranger on the ground clips the injured hiker in, and they're lifted up towards the helicopter. Kotronis is 65 years old now. It's safe to say he knows how to do his job and do it really well. But he says his perspective of the work and his own future has shifted.
The big eye-opener was a couple of years ago, some coworkers and friends were killed. Guys I respect, good pilots. And it's like, when things go bad, they go bad.
Kotronis has a young daughter at home, a family he wants to spend more time with. Still, he says he'll miss this work, miss flying in the Adirondacks.
Maybe that's what makes it special, is for all the beauty, there is a little bit of risk to it.
While Kotronis has mastered the balancing act of flying helicopters, he says the risks are now starting to outweigh the rewards. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio, Lake Clear.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Michael Farley of Canton and Ramon Vasquez and Michael Hart of Malone. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.